Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. I'm really excited for tonight's show. We have an amazing guest, and I was just recently on his show with Tom Zenna. It's called 1 Degree of Scandalous with Tom Zenna and Kato Kaelin. I hope it wasn't a surprise that I was having him on the show. Anyway, besides everything we know about Kato Kaelin, he's a new podcaster, and you should really check out his podcast with Tom Zenna. I think they're going to be two superstars down the road there, but they're paying their dues right now, like me. Maybe not like me, but they're paying their dues. And, the goal here is to get as many subscribers as you can. And one part of this business, the podcast business, is to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't like doing this, you might as well not do it because it's a ton of work. And I don't have a violin here. I don't want anyone crying for me here. But we're going to talk with Kato, who's he wasn't just involved in the crime of the century as a witness with the dream team, the attorneys that represented OJ Simpson, but his life was severely affected by this in so many ways, some good ways and some not so good ways. And I can't even imagine what it's like living in his shoes, because his life in some ways, and I'm going to ask him about this, has been defined by this case. And he probably has to work, and I'm assuming this, and I learned as a young boy, never assume because you make an ass of you and me, but I'm assuming that he's moved on from this, and he's done great things, and he will continue to do great things. But it's probably like that chain you have around your neck, like in the movie The Mission, when De Niro always had to carry that thing with him. He's always got to carry this around with him, But we're going to have fun tonight. This is going to be exciting. And I have, of course, Professor Mike Geary here. We're all looking forward to what he has to say and some of the questions that he has to say. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. Hold on to your service dog. Hold on to your cup of coffee. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me tonight, I'm going to bring him right up on the screen, is retired NYPD Sergeant Michael Geary, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill, thank you for having me on tonight. Good to see you. Thank you.
Oh, Mike, it's a privilege. It was either you or Phil, and I said, okay, it's your turn, Mike. I'm going to bring you on because I know you're a big Kato Kaelin fan. Anyway, people, I guess, our age, and this case, I believe, was in 1994. June 12th, 1994 is when the murders happened. And we're talking about the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. And then afterwards, this became like a pop culture icon of everything that happened in this case. And one of the biggest pop culture, probably a hero now, is whom we're going to introduce to you next, Kato Kaelin. Kato, welcome to the show.
It is, Bill, it is so nice to be here. Professor, I hope I get college credits from this. Is there a chance? Is this an accredited course for podcasts?
We can do it.
I would really appreciate it.
You can do it. No problem.
Shy. No, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. And Bill, thanks again for doing 1 Degree of Scandalous. You've been phenomenal. We get great numbers. And now meeting Professor Mike Geary. It can't get any better. It can't get any better.
Kato, you know something? When I was working in the 2-4 detective squad in the robbery unit when the verdict came down. And I was I was very shocked to hear the verdict. But one of the things that shocked me a lot too was the different perception that white cops had as compared to black cops. Even the black detectives and the black bosses in our squad cheered when the not guilty verdict came. And the pretty much the opposite. The white detectives and the white bosses were just like, "Oh my God." And I found that to be a little bit disturbing.
It was divisive, and it really was, and it never should have been. Everybody lost sight of two young, beautiful people losing their life. It would never should have been a race card, and that was brought up because I think that's what the dream team they saw a way of convincing a jury. And I mean, when I was 6 days on the stand, I saw the jury waving to him while he was to OJ, and I just thought. I didn't know that was, first of all, legal. You get thrown out as a juror. And I said, when the media splits the screen of whites and blacks celebrating, it even made it worse in LA. It just, like I said, it was so divisive. And people had their, they saw it as a soap opera. It ran during soap opera hours. And I was not a person. I was an actor in it. They looked at me as Kato the character.
Yeah.
Kato, one of the things that I always felt is when they came back with the not guilty verdict, I was just right away saying, these people from California are morons. They are absolute morons. They just disregarded all the evidence. And one of the things I want to say for people that don't realize this, where this came from, the Rodney King beating by the LA police happened in 1991. So that was almost like a payback. That was like, the cops got off, now we're getting off. And it was sort of like a tit for tat thing.
I 100% agree with you. And it was this tumultuous time in Los Angeles. And it was, I think that's the reason why. And I think had he been guilty, there may have been riots because there were riots before. And I think they just were prepared for this not guilty and exonerated OJ. So there were no riots. And, the most iconic, I think the most iconic thing about that decision was when the foreman of the jury stumbled on Orenthal's name and the cut to the Brown family and the Goldmans with Kim and Fred bawling their eyes out in disbelief. And then the look of Robert Kardashian when they showed the camera, it's so iconic that he's going in disbelief of, did I hear that right? And I think, on our show, we got to interview some of the detectives, Tom Lang, the lead detective, of all the evidence that was dismissed. It's incredible that the prosecution didn't use so much evidence. The late Phil Venetter was said to me, because I interviewed the police often, and I think towards it, they kind of became, not so much friends, let's have lunch, but they kind of understood my humor and the person I was. And Venetter just said, Kato, this is a 2-minute Columbo case. It's so easily solved. But we saw what happened when you got money, what you can do with money and how you can hire the best lawyers. And then when they got Barry Scheck, who I thought was brilliant, and how he had the DNA of, it was brand new, sort of the 94,
Yes.
how he just took over the case and showed how the blood could have been tainted or anything, but he was so convincing. And I think he was the person that was so brilliant that I think he took over the dream team.
Well, he was from the Innocence Project that looks at cases of people in prison that are convicted and tries to overturn their conviction. And yes, he's a brilliant lawyer. And but
I was a kid during this time, sort of on a trial, and when the DNA came out, Bill and Mike, I kept saying DNA. I thought that meant for me to dude needs apartment. So I didn't know what is this about. So, but all jokes aside, it really was the trial of the century, crime of the century, because it had everything: celebrity, white, black, the dream team lawyer, millions spent on this, and it went on for just under a year.
Kato, I was going to say that, and that was the fault of the judge. Judge Ito. First of all, the average homicide trial in New York City and Manhattan lasts about 3 weeks. That's a long time. Actually, it lasts probably a week to 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. This lasted like 9 months. You said almost a year. That is because Judge Ito allowed too much leeway in questioning. I remember there was a detective that was the DNA guy, and I remember Johnny Cochran used a racial slur against him. He said, "Oh, I don't remember his name was like Fong or something like that." And he goes,
Dennis Fong.
chop suey of Fong or something like that, And I was like, because Judge Ito let them question this guy for 2 weeks straight.
That was another decided part of how it would, because DNA was sort of new to him, and that's where Barry Scheck came in and just schooled him. As a matter of fact, not many people know this, that Dennis Fong, he shook hands with them after his testimony was over, sort of congratulating them because how brilliant they were. And not many people know that he was shaking hands with the defense team, and he was a prosecuting witness.
Well, if you look at the guys in this, there you got F. Lee Bailey on the left and Johnny Cochran on the right. He's to OJ's left.
And Robert Shapiro in back.
Johnny Cochran had the famous line, "If the glove don't fit, you must acquit," And I think I have a picture here of OJ trying on those gloves, which is probably the biggest prosecutorial mistake in the history of jurisprudence.
And through the years, it's been 30 years. 30 years, you meet so many different people. And I travel a lot. Everybody's got an OJ story. Everybody wants to be tied into this somehow because they feel like they're part of it. But I heard from so many people that he's taking arthritic medicine to make sure he's swollen so the glove won't fit, or he was told, no matter what you do, make the glove not fit. So like you said, it was a decision that shouldn't have been made because through the years of me talking to lawyers, it's law 101. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Well, and that's exactly what that is. It's because never give the stage to the bad actor, because he's going to become the good actor in the eyes of the jury. Mike, you're an attorney. You might as well jump in on this.
And also, one of the problems with the gloves was that they were refrigerated, I think, for like between the time they were recovered and the time of the trial. And they're leather and they're wet with blood, they're going to shrink. So they might not have even fit my hand, let alone OJ Simpson's hand. That was a terrible decision. Can I just ask? I just got to ask.
And Mike, by the way, to add to that point before you ask the next question, plus he was wearing rubber gloves before he put it on.
Oh, that's right. So that it would keep
that's
clean.
That's going to make
it
even a little bit tougher to put on. So it was but that was another thing I think people didn't realize, that it's definitely not going to fit. And as we saw.
Yeah, it's terrible. I just got to ask you about when you testified.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, please.
You got to know Chris Darden and Marcia Clark pretty well, probably during trial prep and everything else. What was your impression of Marcia Clark and Chris Darden as a prosecutorial team? Do they seem like a strong team to you? Because you were young, and this is
well,
first time you ever testified. But what was your impression of them?
My impression of them was this. I have to preface this by saying, in my life, I had never been in a courtroom in my life. I didn't even have a parking ticket. You talk about a guy living clean. It was me. And I went in to meet with Marcia often, and Chris Darden, more with Marcia. And she was great. Okay. And she even said to me during this whole, time and meeting me, like, hey, when this is over, you and I are going to have lunch and dinner. And I was like, oh, yeah, great. So I don't know if that was her just trying to become friendly. I mean, I was her witness. I was being honest with her. So during the reviews, Mike, the most confusing part to me, and keep in mind, it's because I've never been on a stand, and the first time I'm in a courtroom was on a double homicide.
Right.
I wanted to make sure I answered everything 100% correctly. And I took a lot of blame because I looked like I was this deer in the headlights, only because I was trying to remember. I don't remember that question in review. I don't remember that. And so it's that look you give, and you don't realize that all these cameras are on you, and they pick that look. And, people thought I was hiding something from the truth. It's the furthest thing from the truth. It was me being 100% honest with every answer I could answer.
Okay. Kato, the image that the press gave you is definitely not who you are, but that is probably a problematic thing that you've had to live your whole life with. And when I even look at the picture of you here, the upper right, well, that's much years later, but the one of you on the stand, I was wondering, where did you put your surfboard when you walked into court?
Yeah, that's exactly. They wouldn't let me bring it in. It wouldn't get through security. That was the toughest part.
That's pretty
I
funny.
couldn't, you know, what's so funny is I had the hair. I'm from Wisconsin. I never surfed. I surfed the internet and that was about it. So, and, so I just had that hair was just my thing. It's funny. Everybody wanted, all these famous people wanted to cut my hair and all that. I said, I don't want to succumb to everybody. Like everybody wanted me to wear their clothes or something like that. I said, no, I'm a witness in a trial. So I turned down all these things that, because I just, you know, I first of all, it was wrong and I didn't want to deviate for who I was. That was me.
I would have taken one of those Armani jackets. What, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I have something from the Salvation Armani.
Yeah. You were waiting to use that joke.
You set me up. I wasn't.
Look, all right, Kato, I think one of the things that everyone wants to hear, we got to go to the Q&A right now.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, and I'll let our audience know, if there's anything that you're uncomfortable with vis-a-vis a question, please just say I'm uncomfortable when answering that, and we'll move on.
Yes, if I'm not comfortable, I would do that, but I think we're going to be okay.
Okay. One of the biggest things I want, Kato, what do you believe happened the night of the murders?
In my opinion, what I believe is that I think OJ was, you know, he came to my door. He never had done that before when I lived on the estate. And he asked me if I had change for $100. And I didn't. I had two $40 bills. And he said he was going out to get something to eat. Keep in mind, I used to run at least 10 miles is a short day. And I would run 10 to 15 miles and play basketball. And I remember him coming to my door saying he's going to get something to eat. And then I invited myself going, oh, can I go? And there's this pause that I knew I kind of made me feel like I overstepped my boundaries with this celebrity and me, this guy living in the bungalow. And then he just said, oh, yeah, sure. And that was the drive to McDonald's, where there was no talking really in the car. He was in this mood of you know, during the questioning, Robert Shapiro go, how do you know what he was thinking? Well, I didn't, but he was quiet and I could tell he was deep in thought. Then we come back and I, you know, had the food going towards his house, the kitchen. He never left the door of the car. And then I looked back and I was like, oh, okay. And then I went back to the bungalow and he called my buddies up and said, hey, I just had a dinner with OJ Simpson, making, you know, jokes. And the funny thing is, I'm talking to my best buddy, who's a DA in San Diego. We went to high school together. I mean, it's, you know, these guys that we'd go out to a bar or whatever. And, you know, it's a typical night for me to call my buddies anyways. And now that I know in life, I'll tell you guys, the most important thing I learned is the timeline. It made me be aware of, after the trial, even to this day, I want to know exactly where I'm at, what was playing on the radio, what kind of car was in front of me. I used to make notes and make sure the person, well, I'm married now, but make sure the person I was seeing or date called me immediately. And I wanted to have proof of everything. So it kind of screwed up my mind, but it also was an important part that I was so aware of the timeline, because we find out later that timeline was so important, because that's the last time we see OJ before he get into the limo. So I think that he had that timeline, and after the McDonald's, I think he went there, and by accident, maybe Ron Goldman shows up, and that angers OJ, because he was a person, once again, it's my opinion, who wanted his cake and to eat it too, to have a wife. And I think Nicole hit a point in her life, she was actually done with him, and he couldn't handle that. This is the one time he is never going to get her back. She has moved on. And I think his ego, he's being a sociopath, he couldn't handle that. And I think he had active rage and passion. I talked to a friend of both you guys, Jim Clemente, who says that's a crime of passion when they, with a knife, and how brutally they were killed, especially with Nicole almost having her head severed.
You know, one of the things also is that Nicole Simpson was a classic domestic violence victim. And it never ends well if it's allowed to escalate and allowed to continue, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And this culminated in a double murder. It was supposed to be a single murder, but Ron Goldman was not supposed to be there. But definitely a classic domestic violence thing that just escalated, got worse and worse. And even that, I don't believe that the jury didn't see that. And that's why I think they were the dumbest jury in the history of jurisprudence.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Now that happened. I didn't meet everybody till 1993. I know the huge part of domestic was 1989, and I agree with that. That the police had showed up at our house a few times, or their house. One of them was on a New Year's Eve party back in '89, where a beating took place, and Nicole did take photos. But exactly, you got to believe that sometimes the spots of a leopard don't change, and he never really changed and could get over that. All this is all speculation, but I think it all points to, with the evidence dismissed, that it was OJ Simpson. My opinion is he's a guilty man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I want to introduce some of the players here.
Yeah.
And of course, this is OJ Simpson, and there's the famous scene when he tried on the gloves, and Johnny Cochran in his summation said the famous line, "If the gloves don't fit, you must acquit."
Yeah.
And that was a huge thing in the case.
Well, I want you to can you go back to that picture?
Sure.
This is what I was mentioning earlier in your show about how 30 years, how people come up to you and say things you never see in 30 years. The bailiff in the background, I did an interview for Fox in LA. He's the security man there, introduced himself, and that's his picture there. And it's amazing how later in life you start seeing some of the people years later, like a Tom Lang, and it just kind of blew my mind that gentleman who you pulled up on a picture now introduced himself to me when I just 2 weeks ago did an interview for Fox. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll let you do the next slide.
It's pretty amazing the things in life that, you can run into people from other parts of your life. And sometimes you don't recognize them at all. And they'll remind you how they were part of your life. I've had that. I taught college for 10 and a half years.
Yeah.
And I've had that with students. They go, Professor Kaelin, do you remember me? And
I never would have recognized him unless he said that, because there's so many people. Yeah. He was the guy that brought him in and out. So, but I thought that was pretty amazing, the tie that it was that this is the bailiff at the trial.
Wow. And here we have Marsha Clark, of course, OJ Simpson, and Judge Lance Ito, who also has a big part in this case, because in my opinion, he was too much of a defense judge. He let the defense get away with murder. Maybe he was intimidated by the Dream Team. Maybe he was like a fan of the Dream Team, but he let them too much questioning. Like, he let them question, as we said earlier, the DNA expert for like 2 weeks. Like, no, that's not okay to do that. You can shred it. I can shred anyone in 2 weeks. But, if
and I also think
one day,
Well, I also think I've never heard of a judge, and I didn't know him. I thought my first time meeting a judge, he was okay. But I think when he had Jay Leno, when the jurors are sequestered, Jay entertained them. They had the dancing Itos, and it kind of became like, oh, the dancing Ito. And I think he might have liked that stuff. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, even bad publicity is still good publicity if you're not getting any publicity, Well,
I don't think that's true in OJ's case.
Brown. And here we have F. Lee Bailey, OJ, and Johnny Cochran. And in this next picture is Marsha Clark and Christopher Darden. That was the prosecution team. And here we have Ronald Goldman and his dad, and Fred Goldman, right? And something, one of the things that I notice, and it's even true in a lot of other cases, people get so enamored with being on television that they'll, even in their grief, even in feeling horrible, they'll still have this love for the camera. And Fred Goldman was on every single talk show on earth. It seemed like almost every single night. And I was just like, dude, you just lost your son. Your son was butchered. Why are you on Larry King 4 nights a week? And look, maybe you feel better because you're getting to talk about it. Therapeutic.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, Bill, only because I met Fred. And I think his pain was so genuine. I think it was so hurt. I know because I've talked to Kim a few times on her show, and I know they were so genuinely affected. I think that might have been cathartic for him to speak out about it. And believe me, OJ passing away and all that, I hope it brings closure. Although I don't know how anything can bring closure when you have that, when you 100% believe OJ did it. That I'm sure that they're glad that he's not there. But it's hard to bring closure to anything when he lost his only son, and it's a difficulty. I think for you guys being you've seen deaths probably many times and covered these things, and I think that's the most incredible job that you have to go and do your job, and I don't know how you got to differentiate that it's your job and this person has family, this person, it just blows me away that you have to do that in your job. And, kudos to you, because that's got to be the most difficult thing, or to make the call to a family.
Yes.
Kato, one of the hardest things, and I actually did a scene in my acting class. I don't act anymore. I thought I could be an actor. I took classes for 3 years. Anyway, it was about making a notification to this woman in Washington Heights whose son was just shot to death. And she spoke no English. And I speak almost no Spanish. And the guy I was with spoke a little more Spanish than me. But we had to somehow communicate to her that your son was just killed. And she came to the door. We ID'd her. She was all smiles and come in and blah, blah, blah. But it took us a while. And then we saw a picture of her son, and we grabbed the picture off the dresser, and we said El Hospital, and like her face just turned, white, and she knew we were the Grim Reapers,
Yeah.
And at that point, she wanted us out of her house, and I understood it. It wasn't anything personal, but
Right.
we were the bearers of horrific news.
Don't shoot the messenger, sort of. It's you're the Marine Corps going to the house with the flag and the bad news.
Yeah.
So it's a difficulty. I understand it completely. And the only thing I can think about it in life that you guys do is life, unfortunately, is grief is part of it, and everybody has to go through it at some point. And you have to go through that, and hopefully a person grows from that. But you never forget grief.
No, absolutely not. I have another question. Now, obviously, I think you answered this already, and I don't think you could answer this for years. But I think at this point, now that 30 years has gone by, you believe OJ was guilty.
Yeah, I think so. No proof that he was not convicted. The civil trial, he was guilty. So that was where the trial was supposed to be originally in Santa Monica. But yeah, at first I really didn't. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it because I thought he was in Chicago during that time. But little by little, you start getting these facts. And I think one of the big parts was he said to me after he had gone to Parker Center with the cut on his finger and the first day, and then they didn't arrest him. They let him come back home. And there were all these people grieving, bringing food to the house and sort of consoling him with the family. And then he asked me to come into the kitchen. And by the way, at that time, I wanted to get out of that house immediately. So I went in the kitchen, and he said, Kato, you remember we ate our dinner here after McDonald's? And I was like, no. And I was, that just kind of really upset me that he was planning it. He wanted me to somehow lie for him. And that changed in my mind, like, oh my God, he's got a major part of this. If he did it, thinking that he could have done it. This is just the very beginning. So
Right.
He wanted me to be an alibi, and I brought that up with the prosecution and all that. So it was devastating. It was very, very powerful for me to hear that. I moved out that very next day.
That's now let me also dispel a few rumors. It was widely reported that you were just a surfer boy. You paid no rent. You just hung out there. You were a slacker. None of that is true, correct?
No, I had a casting business. It's funny because I wrote an article for the LA Times and about an opinion page because I was taking so much beating, and I was just like in a court of public opinion made these accusations that was sort of like the freeloader, the surfer dude, the wacko, even an assassin's target. And I was just never has a man done so little to be recognized by so many. And I just said, no, I'm this person with a casting business. I had a casting business that was really successful. And I worked with at that time, one of my dear friends, his name was Grant Kramer. We had successful casting day parts for feature films, mainly films with Harry Hamlin, Lorenzo Lamas, sort of on the B level, but huge, casting for extras. We loaded them for the films. And Grant was the person I went to Aspen with of how I met Nicole, because I didn't know her. And Grant was a celebrity. He was on General Hospital, and he was in a film called Hard Bodies, and he was stud. He was this guy that women loved him, and just a terrific person, great sense of humor. And his mom happened to be married also at one point to Howard Hughes, so it doesn't hurt. What's her last name was Moore. I can't forget her first name, but so Grant and I had this great friendship, and we met Nicole in Aspen, and I was the third wheel because she was divorced, and then they started up a friendship, a romantic, and started dating, and that's how the whole way I met Nicole. And I was the third wheel when they went out in LA after Aspen, they hung out. I lived in Hermosa Beach. It's probably one of the questions of how I met, so I'm answering it. And then went to one of the parties she threw at her house. And at the party, I saw that she had a guest house on Gretna Green. That's where she lived before. It was on Gretna Green. And after weeks of meeting her kids, I said, can I move in there and pay you? And she said, let me talk to the kids. The kids said, we want Kato here. So that's how it all started, that I lived on Gretna Green, and never, ever was romantic with Nicole. I wasn't the babysitter, but if she ever needed help for me to pick up kids from school, if I was available, if I ever needed a babysit, if she needed me, if I was available, it was hands down yes. The kids were wonderful, beautiful, and that's how it all sort of started for me with that. As a matter of fact, I would tell the story that back when I was living in Gretna Green, I had the guest house in back, and a lot of times I'd work till 4 a.m. in some of the sets in the show business, because I had to be on set as a wrangler of the extras, and I'd go into my room at 4 o'clock, dead tired. You don't fall asleep right away. And then Nicole, every morning she'd take the kids to school with Kris Jenner and her friends. They'd go jogging. The kids would come into my room to wake me up, and that was the Kardashian girls too, Kim, Khloe, and Kourtney. So they're billionaires now. And it's so, like I said, 30 years, these stories you can't make up. It's just, it's not real life, but it is.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family, and make lots of comments. We're going to go to a commercial right now. And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? You must be 21 years or older and present in select states for Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbookfanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-New York or text Hope New York in New York. That was a mouthful for me, man. They always want that disclaimer at the end. That's the hardest part, you know. I couldn't do that.
This is my, speaking of FanDuel and football, this is my Aaron Rodgers signed football. I mean,
Oh, wow.
I'm a Green
Nice.
Bay Packer when he was a Packer. I'm loving FanDuel.
But,
Oh,
but the Packers kicked the butt of Pittsburgh the other night, and with
hey,
the
Jets
new
won,
guy,
baby, your
Love,
team.
you know. So it's great, folks. We have Kato Kaelin here of OJ Simpson fame. You know, he's tagged with that for the rest of his life, unfortunately. But here I get to meet him 30 years after this occurred. And anyone from the chat that has a question that maybe we don't ask, try and put it in the comments, and I'll see if Kato will answer that. Mike, you haven't had very much to say.
Okay,
so
no problem. No problem. Kato, I just got to ask you a question. You referred a few minutes ago to how you were treated by the press. You know, they called like the surfer dude, you know, like the lazy guy, and you had a successful business. After the trial was over and you try to get back to a normal life and rebuild your life, how long did it take to rebuild your life to where the point you felt like you had gotten past all that craziness? Were you able to put back together that company and actually begin all over again?
What day and year is it again? No. Anyways, it's I'll tell a little story before this. The week before the murders, Mike, the week before they happened, I read for a film, and the weeks before I had the script because my friend produced a movie and said, "You've got to read this." It's the person I hung out with and for years, and we were single guys. So he gave me the script and he produced this movie, and they tested me and they put me on film. And I thought, my God, my life is it's taking off. I went to acting academy. It's like going to happen. Do you know what that film was? Mike, do you know what the film was, Mike?
No, I don't.
It was Dumb and Dumber. So I read for the Jeff Daniels role, and I read for many. I met many of the roles I read for, and that was the week. And Aaron Meyerson, still my friend today, he produced that film. Years later down the road, I met with the Farrelly brothers and got to golf with them. I'll name drop at the Bill Murray event in St. Augustine, where the Golf Hall of Fame is. They remember the story, but when I told the story to them, they were on the floor, laughing about, "Oh my God, we've known you this long," and that sort of thing. So my life was kind of happening. It shut down as soon as I became this caricature.
Right.
Stopped completely. It's a double-edged sword. I always asked, God, I want fame and fortune, and I got the fame, and I'm still waiting for the second part. So it's be careful kind of what you wish for. But having said that, I have a double-edged sword. I did have a very successful radio show. It was Howard Stern before me that I came on, and I love doing that. And but the parts weren't the same, and other things that came in were just very exploitive. And I didn't capitalize on it. I think people maybe think I did, but I didn't. And I feel good about it. And, it's taken 30 years and with success. And like I said, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm praying the cream rises to the top. I've sold shows. I've hosted before the COVID, I was the MC for this thing called Wizard World. It was the world's largest traveling Comic-Con. So I travel with Stan Lee, all the actors from Marvel movies, all the actors from DC Comics. And I was the MC on these stages in every major city, the best time of my life. So a lot of good happened. And when I was on the stage, people back then, there was the kids that did, it was more of the kids dressed in costumes, Spider-Mans. They didn't know. The parents would go, "Do you know who that is?" And they didn't. They knew me as Kato, the entertainer, and the parents knew me as Kato, the witness. But it all worked. It didn't matter because, like I said, I did a lot of hosting before, and now that's sort of my key. I'm going to host a few different events coming up for the Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Good.
So it's been really terrific. And if depending where I'm at, I can always open with a few of the trial jokes about me. I never make fun of course, the situation, but it's working out pretty well. And like I said, I didn't change careers because of a trial where I think a lot of the lawyers got their SAG card. I've had my Screen Actors Guild card for over 43 years. So I've been around a long time, and I'm not going to quit.
You're doing well. Courtney C. from the chat, she wants to ask you a question, Kato. Kato, do you keep in touch with Tom Green? You were my favorite duo on CBB.
Oh, that is so great. Tom just got married. Yeah, we're in texting we do. We not as much as we did after Celebrity Big Brother, but basically I saved Tom's life because I got him the veto. And if you watch the show, you'd understand what that means. But yeah, Tom is great. Just recently married. We after the show we hung out a lot, and then life kind of happened, but we're still 100% friends. Thanks, Courtney.
Terry K. from the chat, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Great show as always. Love Kato. We all love Kato. I mean, he's a lovable guy, you know, like that's why I had him on the show. I have him on the show. We only have lovable people. We don't have people on the show you're going to hate. Why would I do that to me and to the person on the show? You know, one of the things you said before, and it's a long life we lead, right? And you heard the term, life is a marathon, not a sprint. And you run into some of the same people sometimes from, as in this case, 30 years ago. Who do you run into now that you like to run into, and maybe someone from this case that you really maybe even get upset if you run into them?
I have run into actually nobody really during the trial. I saw Kim Goldman, which is great, but nobody, I really lived that was a dark part, and I would like to pay it forward. And if you know, after you're talking to me for a little bit, I'm really all about the light. I don't like the dark. And although I learned from it, but I really believe in paying it forward. My mom and dad have passed away, but I was raised in a family that was large Catholic family. And I'm telling you the truth when I say this, and it just sounds so corny. I don't think if my parents, it was rare if they ever had an argument. And I'll never not remember my dad not kissing my mother after an argument. And that's how I grew up. And I thought everybody grew up that way. And
now, Kato, was your last name Scandinavian or Swedish or
Switzerland? My father's from Switzerland.
You look like a Viking, like you could have been on one of those Viking boats years ago.
It's called Carnival Cruise Lines. They have that now.
And I'm on a commercial for that too.
Making fights on those. It's kind of the Spirit Airlines of the waterways.
One of our co-hosts who's not on tonight, but he's in the chat. He wrote, "We, the NYPD, know the silver lining from OJ case. It shined a huge light on domestic violence and changed legal protocols. Must arrest." Yeah. So some of those incidents, perhaps, that the police responded to between OJ and his wife, Nicole Brown, maybe they didn't arrest him when they should have. And maybe
and I don't know, back in '89 when it was pretty violent with those pictures with her bruised up and black eyes, I don't know. You would know the answer better, the protocol, but maybe it's because of celebrity.
Yes.
I had asked you on your show that I was unaware of this. I thought Venata and Lang, to me, they weren't great detectives. And then you corrected me because I didn't know this. And I thought that when they had OJ in the box, we have an unwritten rule in the NYPD. When you get a suspect in the box, do not let him leave unless he uses the L word and he wants an attorney. And then you have to. But if he never asked for an attorney, you keep him there for 3 days and you keep talking to him. And I had thought that they were just intimidated by OJ's celebrity, but then you corrected me and you told me that an attorney called up.
Yeah, the celebrity attorney back then was Howard Weitzman, and he came down there. And that's one of the videos they show because everybody in LA knew we got Howard Weitzman, the biggest at that time celebrity lawyer. And then Weitzman dropped out and gave it to Shapiro. And everybody knew Shapiro was the guy who could do plea deals. And it just changed. Then when Cochran came in, he took over the case. And I think Cochran took over the case because I think he had said, I know how to speak to this jury. And that was the move I think they made. And I think I don't know all the details because I didn't hang out with the defense lawyers, but I've got a feeling if it's the dream team, multimillionaires, there's got to be a lot of ego. There's got to be arguments that happen, after that day of talking to the witnesses. So I can't imagine. I know from the Ryan Murphy show, of course, there's so much that's embellished. but there were arguments galore of people wanting to drop out. So I think it was when Cochran took over the case from Shapiro, I heard there was a big fallout of being upset. I can't verify, but that's what I had heard.
I want to play this because this was basically the biggest moment for everyone that during the trial. And this, of course, is when the verdict is read.
The Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least one crime of murder of the first degree and one or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this second day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please? Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you please poll the jurors?
Well, we don't need a poll. We saw what happened. He got away with it. And, I think 90% of the country thought he was guilty.
Well,
Some people even that cheered the not guilty plea thought he was guilty, but they were just glad that he got off.
I don't
And-
think that, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, Bill, but I don't think people realize, Bill, that this generation now, they don't realize that was on every big screen, including the Times Square, everywhere. And then after that was read, it was split screen of white and black worldwide of reaction. And that, like I said, that really set, especially LA, back 30 years of the celebrations of between black and white. So, and I told you before about that sight of Robert Kardashian, look of surprise, and of course the heartbreak from the Goldman family and the Browns.
Well, Kato, wasn't Robert Kardashian accused, or he was thought of that he had helped get rid of the knife that OJ used?
That was a story that went on. But on our show of One Degree of Scandalous, one of our most incredibly credible guests that we had, and Lang and Vanetta interviewed him, but Marshall Clark didn't use him as a witness, was a gentleman named Skip Junis. Not a lot of people will know this, and it's amazing that the limo driver dropped him off at American Airlines. The gentleman behind him was an ad executive and picked up his wife, who worked at American Airlines, as the celebrity, the woman that would walk celebrities to their flights, so no one would accost them through walking to their gate. He'd pick her up every night after his job. He saw OJ get out of there with this knapsack that I described that OJ, I was going to put in the limo. He goes, no, don't touch that. And I was closer to it. I said, oh, okay. Back then I go, must be a reason. Now that the reason I think is because it possibly could have been that he took it and he not only threw it away in the garbage can, but he put his arm past his elbow. Who throws anything into a garbage can with your hand down there? So they interviewed him. The gentleman didn't know about this case till the next day, because that's when the news came out. Garbage pickup had happened. They went to all the dump sites, no luck. Of course, that'd be almost impossible to find. But I think that was a witness that was so credible that is where I think, after talking to having Skip on our show for an hour, we know that I believe that's where it was thrown away. Everything in that bag, in that in the knapsack that college kids, how you wear the parachute look, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, most people don't know that Robert Kardashian is the father of the Kardashian sisters now. And I mean, he died very young, right?
Yeah, you know what? Robert Kardashian died. Johnny Cochran has passed away. F. Lee Bailey, another one from the defense team from the beginning, had passed away. But yeah, he died very, very young.
Yeah.
I don't think he got to see the whole change of them becoming the ultra success billionaires that they are. And I think he knew Bruce still as a man before becoming a woman. So, or as Caitlin.
Amazing. Phil Grimaldi asked you a question from the chat, Kato. Is there
Okay.
anything that happened before, during, or after trial that the public never really knew?
It's hard. I mean, regarding me or anything with the players.
He didn't stipulate. Well, I think that you
Um,
said that there's a ton of evidence that never got presented.
I think so. I think that is probably the most. And like I said, when we have Tom Lang on, when I heard all the evidence dismissed, it just kind of blows you away of his book. You know, evidence dismissed. You go, how could any prosecutor not want more and more evidence to prove? But for some reason, I think prosecutors build their case and they go, no, we don't need that. Maybe they thought the case was so strong they didn't need it. But in hindsight, you know, like I said, the dream team knew what they were doing.
Yeah, but you know something, I think that the dream team undoubtedly were very good attorneys, but the prosecution wasn't in the same league as them. They really weren't.
Yeah.
So it was like major leaguers going up against minor leaguers. And
Yeah,
you know,
I think that's true. It's Davy versus Goliath, but you know, it was so much evidence that you think still. I think the jury just kind of, you know, they're in there, like I said, for almost a year. They're probably going, let's get out of here. You know, I can't get in their heads, but I'm sure that's a long time to be sequestered.
Yeah.
So someone asked Tammy Clips, I think we covered this before, but I'll let you ask, was he really eating hamburgers with OJ like OJ said?
Yeah, I had chicken sandwich and he ate his quarter pounder in one bite almost. That's how fast it was. Like, wow. So I think he had another one, but he had that ate it. And I said that during the trial, I think I would save I'll wait to eat my entree later. And the word entree came out and became a big thing of me calling McDonald's an entree. So.
You know, Kato, did anyone, I mean, during your whole life and after this trial, was there any people that really took almost like a violent view towards you, or really?
100%. I did, like I said, I did this radio show, and then I started getting like death threats, and so the station had to hire me security for the 3 months. I had two security guys walking me back and forth to my car. And this is at the time when I think a New York talk show host played by Eric Bogasian was murdered also. And it's pretty feasible to happen too. So that was scary. Then I'd get where I lived. People kind of found out without me knowing where I lived. I had notes under my door, people with their theories, but death threats. Many times I'd have people in a street wanting to pick a fight, but I can't tell you how many times people would spit right at me. Numerous times.
Well, why do you think that was?
Because they had an opinion of that, possibly, like I said, the deer in the headlights, that I was hiding something when it was the furthest thing from the truth, and they became so involved in something that their mind was set. They either love Kato or didn't love Kato. And by the way, a lot of people love me, like you said, but boy, you don't remember that. You remember the things that affect you and hurt you. And it could be 1,000 loving you, and that one person, you remember that one. So, but that was the reason, because people had an opinion. And I think believe it or not, it's like 30 years to take to get over that. I think even some people, very rare, but there's still people that have this opinion of, they just can't get over, which is terrible. It's just, if they're hiding this in their body, it's got to be killing them inside.
Kato, how would your life have been different if this would have never happened to you?
Well, it's a difficult question, but it was, like I said, I just had gotten this great reading for a major motion picture. I've had my SAG card. I had done commercials, and I was going to an acting academy. So I could say I'd be a superstar and all that. I don't know, but I definitely think I'd be in this acting business because I look at some of TV shows. I know most of those people. I know most people, a lot of people from my class. It's just amazing that they're ultra successful, and I knew these people. I mean, I could tell stories about meeting people that I hung out with back in the day, from a James Gandolfino who used to drink at St. Nick's Bar. We'd be there, and it's just how big everybody got. And I kind of stayed the same because of the trial. But I'm talking major stars happened. And who knows if it's a tough one to answer, but you know what? I think God said, Kato, this is your blueprint in life. You're going to be really famous in 30 years. So.
Right.
Mike, you got a question?
Got a question. When you had mentioned earlier that when he was he talked to you and said, Kato, do you remember that we had the hamburgers in the kitchen? And you said that you kind of got that feeling in the back of your mind that he was kind of setting you up to try to offer an alibi and to cover for the hours that he was maybe missing. After the trial was over and he goes his way and you go your way, did anybody from the Dream Team or did OJ Simpson ever try to contact you ever again about anything?
No, nothing. I did the civil trial. I was contacted by only the new attorneys, Dan Petrocelli, and that was it. And then I saw OJ during the civil trial because I had to do a deposition with him in the room right across from me, and I was much stronger, and I spoke my mind. So, and it wasn't complimentary, but like I said, you guys, the education that I got learning of what it is actually to do being a witness. And you guys have been on the stand, I'm sure with your job, you have to be up there. And it's when you're not used to it, it's difficult. But when you become seasoned at it, you're like, okay, this is just another day for you guys. And it was something where I wanted to make sure 100%, Kato, tell the truth, just think of the question, answer it. And I was in, deep thought, like I was taking a college exam, that I wanted to get the answers right.
Good.
I loved in the civil trial when OJ had said something like, I would never wear those ugly ass Bruno Mali shoes. And I think the attorney proved, yes, you certainly did wear them and you bought them at this location. And it was like, he got so shredded in the civil trial that it was somewhat, it wasn't a victory because we knew he wasn't ever going to prison from the civil trial. And I don't even know if he parted with much of his fortune during that civil trial.
Those Bruno Malis, this is another great story, but you get my mind going. How's this for a change of fate? I'm the guy that gets invited to Jim Kelly's tournament at the celebrity foursomes that people pay for the charity to golf with me. And then I met the photographer that shot the famous shot of him at Kansas City Stadium.
That's right.
Met Harry, I can't think of his last name. I apologize. He was on our show also. And he took the photos and he told me that story while I'm at Jim Kelly's Kelly for Kids tournament that I've done now for 5 years, maybe 6. And it's like I said, small world that OJ's out and I was the guy golfing with Jim and all the the players, and the wonderful charity of meeting all these people. And Harry Skull, I think that's his name. And he took that famous photo and everybody wanted it. And I think we all know a picture of he was with Nicole and he's wearing those Bruno Malis. Whoa. Yeah. How did I tie in everything? How am I doing, Bill? Did I get everything for you? Is this
I think you did a great job.
It just gelled, Professor.
You're doing great.
You know, what type of life do you think OJ had post murders? And I don't mean, we all know all he did was play golf and this, that, but could he have lived? Did he really live with that, with the thought that he murdered 2 people? And
I think that a person like him, he lies so much, he believes his lie that he didn't do it. I really think he's sociopathic in that way, that he believed that. And another thing I think is that he was no longer that celebrity. He's never looked away the same way. He had the people he hung out with were on the bad side. You hang around negative people, you're going to start doing negative things like the Vegas. And I think it was over for him. Now, could he live with it? His pension wasn't touched. I think he lived with it, but I also think that he loved adulation from fans. He loved it. He could not have it. He had some, but he never had it again like what he had before. And I think that ate away at him, and that's why he was kind of on Twitter with his, opinions that he made, and most of the comments that would come were so negative towards him. So maybe he turned his comments off, but I saw a lot of them that because everybody would tag me to his thing when I delete after seeing him. Going, don't tag me in these things, people, please. But yeah, I think that his life was he had no choices. He couldn't get, Naked Gun was over. Those roles in films, Hertz was over. He's not going to get an endorsement. Being on the board of companies, that's over. I mean, that's devastating.
Yeah. How about his kids from his previous marriage? Do you think they believed he was innocent?
Well, he had kids from his first wife, Jason and Arnell. I think they, I probably think that he's innocent. And I think the kids were Sydney and Justin from Nicole were so young at the time. And then the Browns took over them for their life. I don't know how they're doing. I hope it's wonderful. But I think, I think that's got to be in their head somehow. I think, how do you forget that? Maybe, just having a lot of love around you. But I think no matter what, there's got to be nightmares sometimes they have.
I would think it would be easier for them to believe that he's innocent than to believe
The younger kids?
that
Yeah,
he's guilty, just much easier. Kato, you're an interesting guy, and it's like funny. You're the kind of guy I would like to have a few beers with. Actually, now I'm not even drinking beer anymore. I drink expensive Cabernet.
Well, you know what? I'm not a big drinker, but I'd have a Pinot Noir with you.
Oh, okay.
I'll do that. And I'm from Milwaukee, so I can have one beer.
Yeah, look at you like you're a Milwaukee cheesehead, and everyone thinks you're this California surfer, and that's not true. And look at you, you're a Catholic boy, you're a Viking. You came over here on a ship with a sword in your hand,
Ricola.
The acting part of you is coming out right now, and I think is there any of the we never mentioned, and we'll do this quickly because we don't have that much more time, but this guy caused a little bit of a problem with the case, right?
Yeah, I think you guys would probably know better. When you plead the fifth to questions, that kind of opens up the door. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was probably one of the most talented detectives of all of them. He really was.
He was the young guy that came in there, and it was always and smart. That's what that's what I had heard. But like I said, I don't know. I think he lives in Idaho or something with books. But I met him also. And by the way, I respect people that have these jobs, and I was there to answer all their questions and all that. I had a really positive look on detectives, a positive in police work, because I grew up that way with my parents showed me how to respect. So I always had respect.
Yeah, no, and I think, even when you watched him post this case, he's an articulate guy. Furman is his name. And,
Furman.
Unfortunately, he got caught saying the wrong thing and saying the N-word, and it disqualified from all credibility after that. He could not be.
You got to blame Lancito for that.
Yeah. And it was all because Mike
of a script
and
Bill, written
of a Hollywood. How is that? And that's another part. He was writing a Hollywood script.
Right. And Lance Ito allowed the questioning of that, which had no relevance to the investigation whatsoever. But Johnny Cochran was smart enough to get a copy of that script and knew that the N-word, the forbidden word we can't even say, was included in that script, and it was read to the jury. So I blame Lance Ito.
Well, Mike, it was because Lance Ito's wife was a captain on the LAPD.
Yep.
And I don't think Furman cared for her at all. I think he had a few run-ins with her. So it was like payback, which is also Ito should have recused himself. That was disgusting that he did
You're
that.
right. There's so much that people we're telling so many of the facts, so many more also that people didn't realize were all part of this trial. And hey, I apologize, guys. I have to do a radio show and drive out to do this. I hope I'm not cutting it off too soon.
No. You know,
good.
we usually try to do just about an hour. I just want to really thank you so much for coming on the show. And as I told you and Tom, well, I'll come on your show anytime you want.
We love you.
And Mike would probably love to come on your show. Phil Grimaldi, who's another guy, comes on our show. These are all New York City coppers that they love the spotlight, you know. So
we love it. And listen, I know I'll be talking to you again and probably seeing you. And it's your round.
Absolutely.
All right, Kato, you got it.
Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of Professor Mike Geary, myself, Bill Cannon, and Kato Kaelin, thank you so much for tuning in.
You know what? We're gonna hit 100,000 for Bill. Also, go to 1 Degree of Scandalous. It's Tom Zenner Scandal, but 1 Degree of Scandalous on YouTube. Please subscribe, and all my social media is at Kato KATO _ Kaelin KAELIN. Yes, Switzerland.
And I just got you guys on the Believe Network, and the guy's really excited that he signed you.
Oh, is that what is this news?
Oh, you didn't know that? I'm telling you something for the first time.
Oh my God, that's great. I want to find
Tim
out.
and Tom's holding out on you.
Hey, you're gonna have to back me up. I'm gonna find out with Tom.
Have a great night, Kato, and thank you so much, folks.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
Go Packers. Go Jets. Bye-bye.
One episode just ain't enough.